Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, gentlemanly ladies, world citizens, fellow students of finance, such as myself, a student of finance. I'm gonna do a video discussing the World Citizen Finance Group, my Facebook group initiative project. Also, a little bit about last week's stock market fluctuations and the current world financial, economic, and commercial realities. Grab yourself a cup of coffee, tea, whatever you will. Myself, I'm going to have some coffee. Finance of coffee. Coffee drinkers, we're in the billions around the world, and there's hundreds, tens of thousands of coffee producers, more bigger, smaller, medium. Please support free trade. Not just free trade, I'm saying, but fair and free trade. Am a supporter of free trade only if it's fair, because free has to be balanced by fair, meaning the workers have to be paid and compensated appropriately, so that the bottom line, or if you want a general statement, that the wealth should not flow as it has been flowing since 1984 constantly to only the stock market owners and the owners of corporations and the production, and more concentration of capital and wealth to less and less people. Besides, I'm not going to go much into my own financial theories for financial, social, and political reform at the local national level. Perhaps you'll get a hint of it, but not much. I'm just putting some honey, which have got amazingly on special in Montreal. I've bought it. Never had. I've seen a price for a kilo of honey from Greece at $4.99 Canadian. Have to mention Canadian dollars. And I'm enjoying a little bit of honey since I've paid $5 for a kilo, and it was a very, very good deal, beneficent for me, who at the present moment in time have to state it, am struggling financially, am unemployed, am struggling with about $11,000 of debt, on which pay about $80 a month interest, and have received on the 1st of December $698 to account for my expenditures after rent here in Montreal, Canada, Quebec, after rent, electricity, and the cell phone is paid. I do need a cell phone because I'm constantly volunteering every week, a few times a week. I'm volunteering and looking for other financial opportunities and employment, so I need a cell phone. So those three fixed things have cost me, of course, a few $100s for rent, about $37 for the electricity, and of course for the cell phone. So I'm left with about 156 to account for food, so I have to budget. Anybody out there, I'm just growing this group, but anybody out there, please let me know if you budget, if you do budget, if you struggle financially. Have launched a budget in September to pay down my debt. We all know that reducing the debt, you pay less interest, and the problem is interest. If you're joining the World Citizen Finance Group initiative, my initiative, I'm looking for cooperation with others. Notice that there's 3 questions. One of the questions, of course, is about general finance. If you're interested in finance, the financial universe. That one has to do if you would support limitations on interest. That is, that we have regulations, laws, if you will, to limit the interest payment on credit cards, bank loans, and so on and so forth. And another one is, of course, the major one, if you support a global financial reset. Now that's been in the talks after the great financial crisis started of late July 2007, and it became the Great Recession. The financial crisis became known as the Great Recession. There's been talk of a global financial reset. Now, there's not a uniform monolithic agreement of how that can play in. In the past years, I've written some theories about it, how it can be at the local, national, and international level with a new financial deal for citizens. And also, of course, I'm asking the question if you would support a sort of a world central bank, which in theory have written theoretical theories about it. I'm in support of a world currency. My own theories and propositions is because it would stabilize markets, it would bring a more standardized approach, and it would actually impede abuses of currency trade and financial uh, criminality and finance abuse of finance by, of course, institutions, both private and something, of course, mostly the private, but also in the public arena, to reduce volatility, and not necessarily to get rid of all the past currencies necessarily, but to have a dual system, a balanced system, to have one international exchange unit, as I call it in my own writings, a universal credit, sort of, which would be issued by a world central bank, of course, such as the European Union issues a common currency for 19 member states of the European Union. I believe it's still 19 up to today. 19, I think it's about correct. Today, not October, sorry, December 8th. It's still 19. Besides, besides that, a global financial reset, how I would see it, is that there would be a new financial structure which would come into place, which would, of course, include a central bank, and we would use the current accounts of the international trade, that is the imports, exports, the deficits, and we would have a balance sheet for each and every country signatory. Who would join this financial central union, World Bank, basically a central bank, but it would not operate, will not necessarily have a headquarters. For example, myself, am headquartered in my office here at Montreal, Canada. It's not necessarily in Montreal, Canada, or Jerusalem, Israel, or New York, or Cairo, Egypt. It would be it wouldn't have a central necessarily headquarters. It could just have offices all over the world. Right, like my office is here in Montreal, Canada. I write my theories about finance, politics, economics, commerce. Also spiritual, of course, as a universal spiritual teacher. Also do my workouts, which can be found at the World Citizens Gym, which is an ongoing campaign. And so that is one proposition. So you would act as a bank. Of course, it can be from the existing institutions now with the reforms, and my propositions is to, like I said, the signatories to have the financial and commercial clean slate to go on a balance sheet. So it would be day 0 or day 1, and then it would go in different steps, incremental steps, gradual, 1, 2, 3. So part of it would be the public debt, be restructured, nation states, municipalities, local, national, international level, with the IMF, International Monetary Fund, the World Bank, and of course the IBS, Bank for International Settlements, BIS actually, Bank for International Settlements, and of course the private sphere. Take me, for example, as a world citizen, world LGBTQ citizen who is has a debt of $11,000. On that debt, pay $80 monthly interest, right? And a lot of people pay the interest. Some is even more. Just 3 days ago, the Bank of Canada rate announced that it would stay stable at 1.75, meaning that I'm still going to service the same amount of interest payment of on my debt. If it would have went up by quarter of a percentile, then the debt goes up for the others too, because it's tied in, of course, with the central bank. So we would have multiple debt cancellations, and not just a reset or cancellations, annulations, but we would have not just a jubilee, but it would be transfused into one job creation. My proposal is that, for example, we, from my own experience, for example, during the times that I've been unemployed, have volunteered hours and hours on a weekly basis, just like right now I'm volunteering in the community, right, for different organizations, public, private, whatever the case may be, is that we somehow allocate a certain financing, enjoy people who are unemployed, who are on social assistance, for example, other people, to volunteer, a program of financing for volunteerism, to make the citizen want to volunteer, give their time to volunteer, to go do X, Y, Z, right, in the community. This has a more social aspect to it, right? The other one, which is dear to my heart, have experienced a lot of poverty as a child, growing up as an adolescent, as a young adult, struggling, make ends meet. And in North America or in Canada, at least in Montreal, paradoxically, for example, the cheapest food is the unhealthiest, the most unhealthy food, right? Food security, food security. A citizen to have food security, daily needs, right? We do have some overproduction. We can make new financial arrangements, public and private. All this matters. Of course, my own theories have written many papers. I'm not going to read them now, but just going generally over them, because it's part of my initiative, the World Citizens Finance. It's part of it, my own studies, and we monitoring events on a daily basis. More general matters and then specific matters, and then more details, from the broad outlines to the details. So it would be, food security would be definitely an issue. Another issue would be housing, and another would be for transit, for social inclusion in big cities, metro transport and such, and also to fund things such as art. And one of my propositions and ideals, for example, is that we fund our brothers and sisters, citizens, physical activity to stay healthy. And we fund them, we allocate them. That's part of my World Citizens Gym, where I've posted my workouts, physical activity workouts, and so on. Okay, so anyways, that's a very general overview of my financial propositions. And the coming days, weeks ahead, I'm going to read concrete essays that I've written, propositions, and of course I have to say that some of it is original, some of it is with my own creative, innovative financial ideas, and some of it is inspired, of course, by others who have inspired me, and I'm still learning. I'm still considering myself a beginner in the studying, learning, and acquiring more wisdom, understanding, and knowledge of the universe of finance, right? So I'm looking for collaboration, participation, and help from both private and public individual citizens. I'm looking at the grassroots here in Montreal, Canada, and online. I'm calling it, and I want to hear what you have to say about the global financial reset. How, what, when? How can we do it? Can we do it? Is there enough of a political movement that we can build together across borders to ask for this, to ask, right? So that we can refinance and reallocate in infrastructure for peaceful goals, peace, security, prosperity, locally, nationally, and internationally, right? To take concrete actions, the citizens together, private citizens for the public and the private financial institutions, organizations, and of course, government and non-governmental, financially related groups, organizations, institutions. What do you think about a central bank, world central bank, to issue a common currency? Call it a currency. Myself in my writings have used a universal credit or a universal unit of exchange. Because basically, and now we're gonna break down finance. Because a lot of people hear the word finance, a lot of people say, oh, they see in their minds, they get conjured with fantastic alien looking gadgets, that is not gadgets but equations that are so esoteric, so occult, so mystic almost. I think it's unreachable. And certainly there are complexities to financial dealings and agreements and so on and so forth. Quantity, quality, over time, bonds and stocks and derivatives, and a whole dictionary of vocabulary of finance exists, and I'm delving into it, I'm learning it. Maybe we can do, and I have every participant there to put their daily financial word in the dictionary, and it can be from A to Z in whatever order. Anybody hearing this video, please, if you can do that every day, I would appreciate you. Send you blessing every day, a different word, financial word with a definition, or a little news on the group, or a new news feed to know what's happening in the world of finance developments, dealings both private and public, of course, banking history, financial history, whatever have you, things related to the financial crisis which started at the end of July 2007, which became after, in the years after, the so-called Great Recession, right? And some economists and financial analysts, people in the world of commerce, they say that we are still recovering from that time period. And remember, myself, as my hours, 3 times they got cut off. I went from 37 to 30 to 32, and from 32 to 28, and from 28 to like 25, like slash slash slash, right? In a few months period time. Retail, in about a year, 3 times they got slashed, going from full-time employment to sometimes making more than 40 hours a week, to being slashed to sometimes even between 20 and 25, like to average about 25. It was a hard time, economic, financial time. Yeah? Lots of jobs were lost, and that's economic. So yeah, maybe there's still a recovery, at least since the austerity measures have been imposed, and austerity measures have affected the majority of the people, being more and more in debt. And one financial fact is that this November, and also last November, last year, 2017, we reached Canadians, world Canadian citizen in Canada. We have reached a record debt level per debt ratio per household income. So the percentage of the debt is higher than the household income. This is of course an average, but it's still higher. The average has reached record levels. Right, so you saw since 1984, you see the trend just going up, 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 and then it's never goes down. So it just kept going up, up, up. So of course it's unsustainable because of the accumulated interest and the interest servicing. If the salaries stagnate, which in most cases they have. Sure, we have to also note the positive. There has been a few increases in the past years of the minimum wage, going from 10.65 in the past 3.5 years to 12 today in Quebec. $12 as of today. December 8th. It's $12. Is the campaign for the $15 of minimum wage, in support of increasing, of course, the minimum wage. That is another financial effort undergoing for the present moment in time. So raising the wages, and that's one part of it. There's of course another part of it. Now I want to discuss, again, briefly mention, because the questions that are asked when you join the group is, do you support a global financial reset? But there, do not go into detail what exactly global financial reset means. Some people have different ideas of what exactly it means, and how can we put it into practice, and if there's of course the willingness, and if we can have a transnational, international movement of people join for this cause. To say that, listen, since 1984 there has been so much increase in wealth inequality across the world, it cannot be sustained. People are more in debt, paying interest, and the deficits within the countries, and the international trade, credit cards and corporation, and International Monetary Fund, the World Bank, and other institutions. Let's have a new financial structure. Let's have a global financial reset. Let's use ideas as old as the Bible, Jubilee every 7 years, but let's make an agreement. Let's convert that existing debt and interest that's to be paid, or just the capital debt, and then of course if it's converted right away it's turned to zero, but it's not necessarily nullified zero in that way, because we use it in a conversion. And this conversion would be, like I said, part of it would be to support food security, part of it would be to support housing, part of it will be to support our brothers and sisters, citizens across the world, wellness, funding, social activities, and so on and so on. Of a social nature, like I said, funding people to volunteer even in their communities, more finance, alternative ways, creative ways to reward people for volunteering, for going at the gym, for example, and to motivate and stimulate the economy, not just for a profit. Of course, this is putting people first, of course, putting people first, the wellness of the citizens first. So that is one aspect of it. And in my writings, in my theories, this goes hand in hand with the creation of a world central bank. And like I've said, it doesn't have to be neither in Montreal, neither in Cairo, neither in Tokyo, neither in Jerusalem. It can be offices of it all over the world with no official headquarters, let's say, right? A more decentralized, but at the same time with the unified purpose of security, peace, prosperity, of course, financial stability, equilibrium, to avert financial criminality, crime, and abuse of finance and currency trading and what have you, and to use it for the good of all mankind. Because finance, at the bottom line, can be used for good. And now, going back to what I've said about finance, that people have this idea and they're turned off. The majority of people, oh no, finance, they see equations and numbers and mystic, almost esoteric, occult things, and equations with fractions and percentages and algebra. And yes, there are some complex formula, but the bottom line, finance, if I were to ask me what is finance, the group is called World Citizen Finance. Right? We take a universal approach to finance, because whether I want it or not, my financial choices of buying coffee, honey from Greece, right? Things of that nature. Peas. I have peas from Canada. I'm having on my table now, and I have biscuits, especially from Germany. So on my table I have coffee, right? It's from Africa. The Ivory Coast coffee. I got Canada, North American continent. I got Africa, another continent, the coffee. and I have from Greece honey, right? 3 continents on the table here. Of course, I didn't eat the peas, but they're there. The peas from Canada, right? So 3 products, consumer products. These are consumer goods. So the honey, of course, were the producers in Greece who decided to sell. What, they had a market, they decided to sell their honey, or now don't know this, but this is speculation. It could be either or, that the company approached the Greek producers of honey and they said, listen, can you sell us 3,000 kilos of honey for this amount of money? Yes, no, maybe. Maybe the guy said, 10% more and we'll do it. Okay, 10% more, we'll give you this for 3,734 kilos, or whatever the amount. He said yes. Or it could have been that the Greek producers in Greece of the honey contacted the Canadian exporter, importer, Canadian importer, because we imported from Canada, right, from Greece. So import, export. Import is when you bring in goods in the country. Export is when you send goods to another country. They say, okay, let's make the deal. They made the deal, and myself, financially struggling, right? $5 was a great thing for me for 1 kilo. It has lasted me almost a month. I put a little bit in my tea, in my coffee, a little bit, you know. I was sick a bit, used a little bit more. See, financial cost. It cost me a little bit more to have a cold because I put a little bit more honey, but it was the greatest deal I ever had on honey. $5, right, from Greece. Did I have overproduction or a surplus? I should say, not overproduction, because honey is of course a consumable market, so it's not really over, but it's a surplus, which say rather would call it a surplus. Maybe that's why it was so affordable. It was affordable. The bees, bless them, Mother Nature, producing it, and was able to get the deal for $5 to get a kilo. Kilo is 2.2 pounds, right? So got a kilo, 2.2 pounds for $5. That's 250, even less, 230 about for a pound. That's great. Never seen any better deal than that. Nowhere else. It's not in Montreal. It might be if you go directly to the producer, and if you buy in bulk and what have you. Sure, if you don't buy retail price, if you buy wholesale, and that's a whole different matter. Of course, I'm just saying that the individual consumers, most of us do not buy in wholesale. Some do. Communities get together, and that's the thing about cooperating and getting together financially. You know, if my friend would split a cost on something, we get together, we get to buy more, we save, so you save. So it's always an interesting dynamic when you make a more collective, of course, approach to finance, because of course, one, you get a better price per kilo or per pound, whatever the case may be, if you buy more, right? You go directly to the farmers, the producers directly. Anyways, so a little raw finance 101 there, with the cost of production, export, import, of course, the transportation. So there's a lot of people involved in the import, export, the importers, the exporters, and the middlemen, of course, transportation wise and what have you. So I'm actually in support of fair and free increase in import and export, because I do believe there's good to free trade, but it has to also be fair. Meaning, again, like I've mentioned at the beginning, that not all the profits should have some form of equal sharing in the profits. Will not go exactly into what, because of course that can also be, people can think it's more complicated than it actually really is. Sometimes it can be, but as a general matter, it's a principle which I do support. So now back to the beginning, to the group. The group, this initiative is for collaboration, participation, and learning. Of acquiring more wisdom, understanding the knowledge of the universe of finance, thinking outside of the box, and creating across the borders, like I said, for the principle of a global financial reset. Of course, with X, A, B, C, D, and the point and different points, which I will share in the coming days and weeks with you, my views and my theories about it, my propositions about it. But generally, it has to do with the transformation, or rather conversion, of existing debt instruments for world security, peace, and prosperity. Now to last week's stock market. Oh yeah, what is finance? Like I said, people would think all sorts of mystic, esoteric, occult things because it conjures in their minds complexity and headaches, would stay away from it. But that's something my but finance, really, there's many people with many definitions, but finance is really, if you go to the essence, and this is going to be really simple, right? Because when you hear finance, financial finances, people have all these, right, rather complex, heavy duty, and some of it is, such as longer term agreements, futures contracts, and other more magical, should I say, aspects of finance. But really, what is finance? Really, at the fundamental essence of finance, at the basic root of finance, were to break down all those complexities and all that math and all that, those equations and all that, those millions, and a billion is 1,000,000,000, and a billion has 9 zeros, and 3.58% of 1,000 is much. So what, 3580, right? And other such schemes, 0.25 of 20 and percentage points and all that. If you break it down, all that, and you see just what is finance fundamentally, in its essence, at the core of this word, which is, so mystic, occult, and esoteric for so many of financial finances, right? You see institutions and banks and a constellation of them, and vocabulary which seems out of reach, at least makes a lot of people stay away from it, right? If out of fear, not learn, or a lot of people say, I can never learn finance. No, don't say that. We can. I'm learning with you right now, discussing, meditating, imagining it. Fundamentally, at the core, the essence of finance, my fellow citizens, students of finance, is buying and selling, right? Core of finance, its essence, fundamental principle, raison d'être, reason to be, is buying and selling. Say you want this hat, not that you want it, but let's say you want this hat. You say, I like the hat, black, it looks good, I want his hat. And you PM me, hey man, I saw you doing a video, listen, I really like your hat. I think my head is a bit bigger than yours. I'm a little bit older. I've learned more finance than you. I think the hat would better suit me. I have a PhD in finance and all that. And he private messages me and he says, I want your hat. And I said, okay, you want my hat? And you do want my hat? And yes, I'm listening. What do you propose? Well, listen, I propose I give you $156 cash, or whatever, but PayPal or send you a wire transfer, $156 cash, or I have this jacket, this leather jacket. I think you're a more rock type. It will suit you well. It's when I was younger in 1984, and I was rocking. I went to this concert. I had it. I still kept it. It's still in mint condition. I would trade you this leather jacket, which I paid $667 for it back at the time. It's still worth a lot of money. I'll trade you my jacket, my beloved jacket, for it. I think you'd be like a son to me, passing the torch, whatever, like a mentorship type of thing. A hat for the jacket. See a hat. Should I take the hat? Should I take the jacket? And of course, a jacket like that, 34 years old, it's been in a concert, paid a few $100s for it. Still worth it. Leather, maybe. If I choose the jacket, it would be an item for an item. There's no cash involved. There's no money. There's no currency. It would be my hat for his jacket. If I accept that, right, for his jacket, it would be a trade like that, a simple trade. We'll go what in economists call the what's called the underground economy, or the fourth economies, like levels, or fourth level economy, with one being primary, secondary, tertiary, and then you have the more hidden one, which is not counted in GDP and so on, such as this trade would be. But of course, if I say, nah, the jacket, I have already a jacket, I'm pretty happy with it, but since I'm in debt, $11,000, paying interest of 80, only got 698 December 1st from the government as a social assistance, paid rent, paid electricity, paid myself. I'm struggling. I'm already in the minus in my account at the bank. The 156, I could buy groceries with it, and a bus pass, and even pay my interest, put money aside to pay the interest I have to pay for next month. So I'll take the cash. The jacket, well, if I would have been in a more financial situation better, I would have taken the jacket, but I decided to take $156. So that is what happened here. That's a financial transaction. The other one is and isn't, because the other one would have been just an exchange of two goods, right? It would have been barter. It would have been a very primitive finance when we didn't have the units of exchange, which is basically what money is, right? Money, money, money. What is money? It's a means, a unit of exchange. Officially, the money, if you look at it, it's not our property officially. I'm not going to go into the legal aspects of banking and definition, what money is, what money is not, but it's basically a means for us to change goods and services, right? It's the facilitator, the means, right? It's like a middleman, if you want, the money, right? And that, of course, escapes a lot of us, right, on a daily basis from connecting to seeing it, right? So if I do take his money offer, of course that's a financial transaction. He's gonna give me 156 for the hat. I'm gonna give him his hat, put it nicely, and tada boom, a nice bag, 156. A financial dealing. Very simple, right? You buy and you sell. He's making me an offer, right? Buying. He's buying from me, I'm selling. If not, I'm gonna trade for the jacket. There's no currency, there's no money, right? It's an exchange, it's a barter, it's goods for goods. Goods for goods can also be, somebody says, listen, you have a bag of rice, I have a bag of potatoes. How about I give you half of my potatoes, you give me half your rice? Okay, let's do it. Barter change. There's a different way of finance, right? But every day when we use it, when we go to the store, we buy and we sell. We buy and we sell. What's happening on the stock market? There's buying, there's selling. There's selling, there's buying. There's buying, 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 or there's selling, selling, selling. But of course, there's a lot of speculation involved in the stock prices and the production of the companies and the shares and investments and their assets and liabilities. What's an asset? What's an asset? Usually something that produces, gives something. An asset can be employees, an asset can be a technology, an asset can be land, an asset can be the machinery, an asset can be, of course, real estate, a liability can be debt, a lawsuit, liabilities can be debt. Even to a certain extent, I would say that some companies, some of the shareholders might be a liability, because if they can short sell, and there's insider trading, and there's those negative, bad criminality things going on in the financial crisis, in the financial world, that is. And I was going to say that during the financial crisis, many have said that CDOs, which stands for collateralized debt obligations, were in fact a toxic criminal financial instrument. So finance, buying and selling, ladies and gentlemen. Stock market was down last week. My proposition is it was expected. I predicted in some of my other videos, and it was a pretty severe market downturn for 3 days in a row. If next week is going to continue, worst case scenario, there could be a stock market crash triggering a financial contagion, and a worst case scenario, global economic collapse, because the stock market crash will trigger spawn a global financial panic and a contagion, and this will be world economic collapse. Too much debt and too much contribution, and of course the global, actually the trade war is between China and the United States, and want to say that because United States is the biggest market, meaning the consumers, the buyers. The United States buys the most from the world. That's it. There's no arguing against that. That's what it is in today's 2018 December 8th World economic status. Where are we at? Like, where are we at? Myself, I'm not in a good financial position right now. Like I said, $11,000 in debt, paying $80 interest a month, received from the government of Canada $698 December 1st to assist me financially, of which after rent, electricity bill, and bus pass, I've remained with about 156 to spend for food. Have loaned back in November $50 to somebody who I'm looking to get it before Christmas. That's another $50 for me to spend for Christmas, whatever. Financial precarious situation. But of course, I'm volunteering. I'm looking for employment and financial opportunities. But many people are in debt in Canada. Debt has reached record level. Last November, the government announced there's more and more programs to cut debt, because the more debt we have on credit cards, if you have 3 maxed out credit cards, you're going to pay interest, and that's money, capital money, that's just to go on to service the debt, right? You don't pay off the capital, the initial that you consumed, you bought, you sold, you did XYZ with the money that was given to you with the credit card, the access to credit that was converted into cash, or you bought whatever financial transactions you made from Canada, United States, the world over, with your credit, with your bank loans, with your credit lines, with your bank lines, from a private, or for a business, or for a venture, travel, whatever they call it. They're really, right? So back to what I was saying, that the stock market was down, right? Considerably, 3 days in a row. If it continues next week, again, a downturn like that, it's gonna be 2 weeks of a downturn, right? Then the week after, if it continues again, a downturn, but the same manner, in the hundreds of points, it was close to 700 points twice, It's like, man, it's 588 when it closed on Friday. Then the day before it was about 700 down, right? So a few days of being down severely, not just dozens of points. The Dow Jones and even the Asian Nikkei market in Japan was down a few hundred points at one point Tuesday. So if it continues for Christmas, it could be that on the onset of Christmas, it could be a stock market crash or a stock market severe downturn before Christmas, which could trigger a global financial panic because of a severe downturn, continued severe downturn in the stock market by many percentage points and many hundreds of points, which will trigger the financial panic, which, worst case scenario, world economic collapse, depression, world economic collapse. This is the worst case scenario. I don't want that. I want global financial reset, my financial theories to be put into application and practice, and people to get together to advocate for that, to stabilize stock markets and world financial markets for global, international, and worldwide peace, security, and prosperity. Starting with me, you, we together. Global, international, locally, national, international. So back to the situation that, of course, those who know, the United States has imposed two sets twice. Once 6 months ago, once 3 months ago, and it's supposed to be again in January. A third set of tariffs on China, duties on more than 250 billion worth of goods. There's been two before that, again in 200 billion worth of goods last time. So you can imagine the amount. And who's gonna suffer most? The average consumer, the lower class, the unemployed, the middle class. Right? The wealthy will not suffer for a percentage in price increase, but those who have a lot of debt, a lot of credit card, their consumer goods, their lifestyles will be affected. Be able to buy less and less and less because of the tariffs. Because paradoxically, United States of America is the biggest market, the biggest consumer market. The biggest buyer in the world is the United States of America. And paradoxically, Trump, I don't know what he was doing, he imposed tariffs on China, the biggest exporter, and one, I would argue to say, also producer of goods. I would argue that China is the biggest exporter, producer of goods. United States is the biggest buyer, consumer of goods. Whatever those goods may be, from clothes to gadgets to toothpaste to consumer or durable goods. It can be durable goods also. A hat, durable. My head is not that durable, maybe, but maybe on yours. But nonetheless, joking aside, durable is something, clothes, things of that nature. Bicycle, again, yes and no. Like watches, goods, durable goods, consumer goods, coffee, honey, chocolate, right? So the biggest importer, that is consumer, the biggest market for goods, buyer, is the United States of America. And Trump initiated a trade war with the biggest exporter of goods in the world, and I would say producer of goods also. But because that can be argued and people are gonna say, yeah, no, not the biggest producer, nah, you know how it is, egos, and you get into arguing ad infinitum for 7 years, and you argue over the same subject, and our people still haven't grown yet. So hopefully nobody will go by the end to the end of this lecture and would hear that. But if you do hear that, I don't know what you heard, but I said world peace, blessings to all. So China is world's biggest exporter, and I would say producer. And Trump initiated a trade war as the world's biggest consumer, importer, and buyer market. world's biggest market. I'm talking about nation states, world's biggest market. There's nation states market in the world. This trade war started about a few months ago, right? With the first position of tariffs, and then the second, which was higher, $200 billion on, not $200 billion total, but about 10% on $200 billion worth of goods, which is more than $20 billion. Remind you that $1 billion is followed by 9 zeros, so it's 1,000 million. So this is at the macro level, right? So on the some goods were exempted, though I have to say that some goods were exempted, but nonetheless, that's a huge amount. So those goods from China, whether it be socks, and Walmart, of course, it has a lot of products from China. Other stores also, whatever they may be that people buy regularly or not, gonna increase in price for the market in the United States, right? And now we have another thing which is tied in with this trade war, which I'm saying we as Canadians, myself being a world LGBTQ citizen, Canadian LGBTQ citizen, world Canadian, world citizen, Canadian. I'm saying we have another mess. We have last, I think Saturday, the authorities, police, have arrested the global financial officer for the corporation known as Huawei, Miss Meng. Miss Meng is actually the daughter of the founder, Reng Shui, of Huawei, who was founded in 1986, if I'm not mistaken. It was founded in the 80s, 1986, I think. If not correct, it could be 89, but in the 80s, in late 80s maybe. My understanding is 86 and founded the corporation. Telecommunications, huge corporation. Listen to this. The second overtook Apple to be the second producer of smartphones in the world. Smartphones is, of course, the big seller now. It's in, right? Smartphones. All right? Even me, I own one, right? Most people are trying to own one or change it for a new and better one. I had mine for 3.5 years, you know. Still working. So they arrest Meng, the daughter and chief financial officer of Huawei, because of allegations, of course, that Huawei, with Meng and others, the Huawei Industries, or corporation is called, have allegedly, and this is alleged, now it's ongoing, done business with Iran. And Iran, of course, the United States has imposed sanctions on Iran to do business, and they were, of course, forbidden to do business with Iran. So supposedly something from between 2009 and 2014 and such, there's this business supposedly done between Huawei, which established supposedly this subsidiary, shadow subsidiary called Sky something, and which supposedly was Huawei doing business with Iran. So they arrested her because of that, of breaching those sanctions, right? What is gonna happen? We in Canada, we arrested her in BC. Now, from my understanding today, the ambassador of Canada was called, I think in Beijing, yeah, the capital, Peking, of People's Republic of China, and that told Canada to release her, otherwise it will be serious consequences. Tough situation. Now it's exploded into a diplomatic crisis, and of course it's tied in with a trade war. So Huawei also, have to note that it's supposedly the biggest in telecommunications, producers of machinery, gadgets, and hardware, such as cell towers. You know, the towers for which our smartphones operate. We're able to send text and call and what have you. And of course, they're involved in the development of 5G, which is the next big thing in speed and what have you. 5G technology, which is pretty amazing if you think about it from a technical perspective. A science perspective is wow, it's very, very, very powerful stuff and secretive stuff. and of course it's pretty much protected by intellectual property and what have you. And not only that, but they have been accused of being involved in espionage, spying for the Chinese government. There is people in high ranking in the people's Chinese Communist Party, CCP, which is the one ruling party. There's not a party in politics of China. The People's Republic of China still is officially a communist People's Republic of China. Right? There's no free elections. There's elections at the local level, but it's the Communist Party pretty much. It's the only party I think that's allowed by law. Even there's no other party allowed by law than the Communist Party of China. So accused of spying. So we got this mess going with this Huawei, and she got arrested in Canada. Now it's an ongoing diplomatic crisis. And of course, it has to do, of course, pretty much with a trade war, because Huawei is a major player in Asia, at least in smartphones, and of course a little bit in North America, not that much, but in other places in the world, it's a multinational, transnational corporation. Like I said, the second producer of smartphones, Huawei, is pretty big. It overtook Apple. So it's serious. What's going on here? I want to know more about this story. You know, as an advocate of world peace, security, and prosperity, don't like seeing this trade war, because who's going to get affected more? Us, the people, the workers, you know, the people who are trying to get a new job, to change job, the unemployed, consumer goods, even more financial strain on the majority of the people. Also, who already have are financially wealthy in the millions. It's not an incurring existential problem for them. Look what's happening in France. It started because of that taxation. It's going to affect the people even more. You know, now Macron rescinded it. He said no, no, no. Right? So economics, it triggered the movement, the Yellow Vest movement. From my understanding, now has other demands as well, since they're doing some monitoring that's also related financially to the financial stress of people, austerity measures, and all that. So I mean, Trump and starting trade wars. I mean, Mr. Trump was born with the silver spoon. He inherited what, $418 million from his father. That's almost $500 million. So 400 million from his father. You can't say that somebody who inherited hundreds of millions of dollars, and then what did you work in your life? You know, think myself. I've worked for Walmart, worked for as a receptionist, worked for Sears, worked for other companies. Now Donald Trump, he inherited all the money. He inherited the money. As you know about working and the working class people, you can certainly argue that, but the fact is that is a man who inherited hundreds of millions of dollars. What is the one of the communists Karl Marx is saying? Which, as a democratic society, and if we want to call ourselves democratic, it's something we must explore. He said, and he wrote, at least, I don't know if he said in German or Yiddish, whatever have you, but one of the things in his writings, I've studied Karl Marx's writings, said that we need to impose an inheritance tax, right? I would argue it's not democratic. Right, because how can you say that we are on an equal footing and democratic when myself or you or somebody, you know, comes from a family, working class family, who makes it through barely financially, rent, food cost, and a little bit for clothes and everything else, can't save, barely can save a penny, a dollar, that's it. But then you have somebody who inherits hundreds of millions of dollars, such as Donald Trump. How is that democratic? Is that equality? Do those people start on the same democratic and equality there? I would argue no. I would say no. Of course not. That person inherits, such as Mr. Donald Trump, he inherited $400 million from my understanding. It could be more, it could be less. It's still in the hundreds of millions, right? Of dollars, not 1 million, hundreds of millions. So of course you can create business and do business and finance works, but you didn't build the buildings. You don't do the buildings, right? you can't say like, right? So pretty much. Global financial reset. Yours truly, Adrian H. Dragon. World citizen finance. Let's learn, study together. Everything related to the world of finance, and as we attain more wisdom, understanding the knowledge of the universe of finance to find solutions, alternatives, and end the trade war and achieve world peace, security, and prosperity. And of course, global financial reset for our new financial structure, and that we turn and get creative and think outside of the box to make finance or financial education a part of our daily lives, and the citizens be involved, become finance citizens, locally, nationally, and of course internationally. At the World Citizen Finance here, my group, my initiative, open to all, and that of course we achieve a public and private equilibrium at a local, national, and international level in finance, and that we find solutions to economic inequalities creatively together and be more cooperative, putting people over profits, and trying to be less competitive, but more cooperative. World Citizens Finance, Adrian H. Dragon, yours truly, World LGBTQ citizens from Canada,